Imagine the following. You are the oldest child in your family, and naturally, you see yourself as responsible for looking after your younger siblings. For the good and the bad, you manage to keep a good relationship with them, but eventually you grow up and need to move on into bettering yourself. And you do it. You manage to get a job working for a legend. And through that job, you make it into the job you have dreamed about your whole life. You have done it. You are where you have always wanted to be. And then you get the news about your sister having died in an unfortunate accident. You are devastated about your loss. But eventually, you have to move on, and you do it with your work. You are Jeff Johns, and you immortalize your sister Courtney's memory by creating a new comic book superhero, Stargirl. Stargirl, aka Courtney Whitmore, is a DC Comics legacy character created by Jeff Johns and Lee Moder, who first appeared in the 15 issues long miniseries JSA Presents Stars and Stripes in 1999. The character's name, appearance, and personality were patterned after John's sister Courtney, who died in a plane accident in 1996. Courtney was originally known as the second Star Spangled Kid, but then changed it into Stargirl after getting the cosmic staff from Jack Knight, the son of the original Starman, Ted Knight. Around the same time Courtney was given the cosmic staff and changed her superhero name, she joined the Justice Society of America in James Robinson's and David S. Goyer's run of the JSA, which Jeff Johns later also joined to write, and where she made most of her appearances in the 2000s. Outside of the comic books, Stargirl has also made appearances in the animated DC shows like Justice League Unlimited, Batman the Brave and the Bold, Justice League Action, and in name only in Young Justice. When it comes to the live action appearances, Stargirl has also appeared in a good CW show like Smallville, a bad CW show that is The Legends of Tomorrow, and in her own self titled DC Universe original series, while reports are claiming that she would also appear with the rest of the JSA in Dwayne Johnson's Black Adam movie. Before I start to actually talk about the first two episodes of the first season, I need to make this as clear as possible. Stargirl is a DC Universe original series like Titans, Doom Patrol, and Swamp Thing before it, and not an Arrowverse/CW show. It does air on the CW for those who cannot afford to pay subscription fees to the DC Universe streaming service or HBO Nordic, where I have watched the first episodes. Mark Guggenheim, the CW boss running the Arrowverse, has also gone on the record to say that the cameos of the DC Universe shows at the end of the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover were a one-time thing that will never happen again. We can all breathe easier knowing that the people who cut off Green Arrow's balls, pulled women in refrigerators on Black Canary, turned the Flash into a special needs person, made Superman exist only to make Supergirl look better, and character assassinated Batwoman. This video is coming eventually, I swear. Will never get their hands on Stargirl. Also, I will be spoiling both episodes 1 and 2, but not as detailed as possible, so you can still watch these episodes and be surprised by the little things in them. Otherwise, this has been your spoiler alert. The first episode begins with the introduction to the golden age of comic books inspired world through the eyes of Pat Dugan, aka Stripesy, played by Luke Wilson, who Jeff Johns, by the way, wanted for this role and wrote the script with him in mind for the role. We see through Pat's eyes the losing battle between the Justice Society of America versus their Golden Age nemesis team in Justice Society during a Christmas Eve. Pat recognizes the members of the JSA as they appear, and I can buy that as some of them do have legacy successors, they do end up dying in the battle. Except for Wildcat, because his powers include having 9 lives, so he can walk away from this and appear later. In Justice Society, comprising Icicle, Brainwave, the Wizard, Sportsmaster, Tigress, Solomon Grundy, and other unseen characters, kill most of the JSA in front of Pat including his friend and partner Sylvester Pemberton, aka Starman, played by Joel McHale, who gives Pat his cosmic staff to pass on to someone who it will work on. It doesn't work on Pat, so he can't use it. At the same time this tragedy is happening, a 5-year-old girl is waiting for her father to come home for Christmas. What this opening scene does right is the world building, as we see the different members of the Justice Society either physically present or by alluding to them with a prop reference into their existence. The villains in the Injustice Society are also portrayed as villains in their outlook and actions as they are getting shit done. There is also a strange timeless feeling as the current year is not mentioned either here or in the time skip to the next scene, except when they do mention some recent events, or fortnight. 10 years later, Courtney, the little girl from the previous scene, is now a 15-year-old, played by Breck Basinger, moving to a new town with her mother Barbara, played by Amy Smart, who has married Pat sometime during the latter half of the time skip. The moving scene is a rewritten sequence to the first quarter of the Stars and Stripes issue 1, with a notable exception being Pat's son Mike being present, as he only joined the family in the 7th issue of the miniseries. Recreations include Courtney being approached by the Mean Girls, getting into a fight with the 1% bullies, or jocks, who, you know what I'm talking about, the ones who think they are untouchable because of their rich and influential parents. After coming home from detention, Courtney goes to sulk in the basement, where she finds Pat's old Justice Society stuff and the cosmic staff. This is a big departure from the comic book, where Courtney would not get the staff until having been Stargirl long enough to have joined the JSA, but it's expected to rush some things through, as Stargirl is best known from the animated series and to casual comic book fans by having the staff rather than just an anti-gravity belt. The cosmic staff is given sentience that I don't recall it having from the time when I read Robinson's JSA run, and it drags Courtney to the night to do some gymnastics and to get some comeuppance with the 1% jocks bullying other kids at a local drive-in theater. It kind of gets out of hand from just depressurizing their car tires to accidentally blowing up a car when the staff goes too far in defending Courtney as she is discovered by the jocks, but luckily not identified. Returning to her home, Courtney is immediately caught by Pat, who has discovered the cosmic staff being absent. As Jeff Johns is the main writer of the first 2 episodes, it stands to reason that he wanted to do what a lot of different writers eventually do when returning to something they first did after such a long time ago: rewrite their old work as something better and improve it. In that sense, Courtney's relationship with her stepfather is much more tolerable than in her debut series, where she was actively against the idea of moving to Blue Valley and teases Pat for having been a sidekick to a teenage superhero with some cruel comments. Charles has also written in a plot point to create drama when Pat tells Courtney about the JSA, and she thinks the old photograph of Sylvester Pemberton resembles the picture she carries of her father, Sam Curtis. As the staff previously worked for Pemberton and now it works for Courtney, she believes her father to have been Starman, who was going by a different name. Except those of us who have read Robinson and Goyer's JSA run know that Starman is not Courtney's dad, and who he really is, and what happened to him. But expecting to see where this is going, and not to potentially spoil it, let's not talk about it. Now, when I explained how the 1% bullies think they are untouchable because of their influential parents, I wasn't kidding. One of the Jock's parents is a former Injustice Society member, Brainwave, and the reappearance of Starman's staff after 10 years makes him worried about his old enemies coming back with new allies. He alerts his old leader, Icicle, and sets out to take care of the new holder of Starman's staff. Meanwhile, Courtney has reached some common ground with Pat about his past as a superhero sidekick being kept a secret from her mother and not taking the staff again. Unfortunately, the sentient staff did not agree, and loopholes Courtney to go out into the night again, where Brainwave ambushes her. Brainwave is not a very well known DC villain as he was created in the 1940s and he used to look like this. So this is a very strong first impression with Christopher James Baker portraying him as an intimidating villain with telepathy and telekinesis. Using the staff and her previously established gymnastic skills, Courtney is able to sucker punch Brainwave when he lowers his guard thinking he has the upper hand and runs away, with the first episode ending to a cliffhanger where the fleeing Courtney is confronted with Pat wearing the robot suit, which Jeff Johns wanted into this show so badly that he declined previous pitches for the show from the producers who didn't want it in the show. The second episode opens exactly where the first one ended, with the robot suited Pat taking Courtney to his garage in town where they can talk properly about what has occurred and explain his robot suit. Pat learns from Courtney that Brainwave was the villain who attacked her, and with his memory of his JSA friends being killed by him 10 years ago, tells Courtney to avoid him and any other possible villains in town. Meanwhile, Brainwave visits another Injustice Society villain, the Wizard, who also lives in Blue Valley, and informs him about the Cosmic Staff's reappearance, about who has it now, and that he is going to kill the person with it after finding out what she knows. Having returned home, Pat and Courtney continue their conversation about the Justice Society and a surviving member, Our Man, who had been trailing the Injustice Society members to Blue Valley but died mysteriously in a car accident and the trail went cold from there. Pat tried to follow the trail but couldn't find them and thought, if they're not here, I might as well move here, which he admits in retrospect to have been a bad idea. Pat also explains that his robot suit was made to help Our Man, but the adrenaline junkie didn't want his help, and tonight was the first time he ever used it. Courtney cherry picks some points from Pat's speech about why she shouldn't take the staff anymore and not to do what he had done in the past. The fact that she needs a costume and a mask to hide her identity to protect her family. Pat cannot sleep that night and reads up on some old files about the villains he has. And that leads us to a montage of him trying and testing his robot suit at a deserted field after the sun has risen, with a Johnny Cash song, I Got One Piece at a Time. It is a hilarious and a clever reference to how his character was created in 1941. Back at home for breakfast, there is another hilarious scene with Pat and Courtney trying to explain their battle wounds to Barbara, the matriarch of the family. She is suspicious and weirded out, but takes it as a positive sign that her daughter and husband are getting along. Before Courtney goes to school, she takes Starman's costume with her. Meanwhile, Brainwave interrogates his son about the events of the previous night and if he was attacked by a girl. There is also a moment where I assume Brainwave is trying to test if his son has the same abilities as he has. At school, there is another montage with Courtney using the home economics class to remake Starman's costume while destroying a couple of sewing machines. At her work, Barbara gets introduced to the poor work morale from the civilian disguise of the gambler, while Pat goes to the gym run by a character that Young Justice fans should recognize from his name, Larry Crusher Crook, as Sportsmaster. Now, I skipped over this in the recapping of the first episode, but in the cafeteria scene we see now, again, here are the DC legacy characters destined to become Dr. Midnight and Wildcat, as well as the orphaned son of Our Man. Because the future Dr. Midnight does not have friends, she is FaceTiming with her parents, who happen to work with Brainwave in his civilian work, and he just barely misses Courtney as she sits next to the web camera. That very same night, there is an open house or a parent teacher event at Courtney's school, with all the parents having arrived there from Pat and Barbara to Brainwave and the other villains in their civilian identities living in town. At the event, Brainwave uses his telepathy to locate and isolate Courtney from the crowd and threatens to kill her mother if she doesn't bring him the cosmic staff by midnight. Courtney runs over to Pat and they leave with Barbara. At home, Pat tells Courtney to stay put while he goes to face off against Brainwave in his robot suit, and if he won't come back, to leave the town with her mother and stepbrother. Luke Wilson's performance with Jeff Johns' writing really sells Pat's heroism to sacrifice himself for his family in this scene. As Pat leaves, Barbara talks to Courtney about how perfectly their lives have transitioned into this new town, blissfully unaware of the danger she is in, which is what motivates Courtney to put on the suit she recreated earlier in the episode and to go fight Brainwave. Pat confronts Brainwave in his robot suit at the school parking lot, but as the villain is a psionic, all of his attacks are either deflected or thrown back at him with telekinesis, until his suit is pinned between a car and a school bus. Courtney arrives in her modified Stargirl costume, introduces her superhero identity to the villain, and declares Pat as her sidekick. She manages to use her gymnastics to dodge some of the objects Brainwave sends at her, and gets in a lucky shot, but Brainwave fights back angered and annoyed, eventually overpowering her and separating her from the staff. The veteran supervillain then gloats the heroes at his mercy with telepathy, especially the teenage girl in the costume, who he sees as nothing like the heroes he has faced before, and then prepares to slowly kill Courtney. But with Brainwave's attention on Courtney, Pat manages to distract the villain by blinding him with the robot suit searchlight and give Courtney the seconds to reach the staff, grab it, and stick it into the Brainwave's forehead. Teamwork saved them both, and Brainwave is left comatose from the staff poking him on the head. He is delivered to the hospital where his son sees him, probably to become Brainwave Jr. in the future episodes. Pat and Courtney retreat to Pat's garage to reflect on what they just went through with the supervillain, and Courtney asks Pat about the cosmic staff's nature and sentience. This is where we get a mention of Ted Knight, the original comic book Starman, having built it, but the details are left for later episodes. Courtney decides that as they have stopped Brainwave together, they can now start working together as the superhero and the sidekick they are in the comics as Stargirl and, giving Pat an improved superhero name, Stripe. Pat is initially reluctant about returning to superhero work, but otherwise doesn't decline on his stepdaughter's offer to be a team. The episode ends with Icicle, the former leader of the Injustice Society, arriving to town, seeing Solomon Grundy locked under Barbara's workplace, and meeting up with the gambler. What these two episodes have done well has been integrating the Golden Age superheroes and villains with their legacy successors in its cast of main and supporting characters, where a comic book fan can recognize them and new or casual fans can get a proper introduction to them. A majority of the main cast is an original character from the comic books, meaning that they have a role and a path to go towards in their comic book counterparts' fates. With Jeff Johns running the show as the named character's creator, you can see genuine passion behind the writing and the production. If Stargirl was done on the CW like the Arrowverse shows are, this show would have been vaguely resembling its source material with the creation of show characters that have no place in the adaptation and would only be taking space from the characters they are replacing. I will go into this more when I review Batwoman. As a writer, Jeff Johns is a strong storyteller whose major focus is in the character development. In both the show and the comic, Courtney's starting point as an unlikable character is a trope that Johns used back in 1999, where Courtney started out as a moody teenager who does not like her new stepfather, but over the time warmed up to Pat as her sidekick and came to accept him as her new father. Jones also used this trope when he wrote Shazam's New 52 origin story in 2012, that was later adapted into David Sandberg's move in 2019. The villains are also written with depth that makes them feel like human beings in their civilian identities, while their villainous motives are left ambiguous to be revealed later. There are, however, some inconsistencies when it comes to the setting of the show. As the golden age of heroes was originally in the comic books back during 1940s and 50s, and the show's present day is taking place in a modern day where Fortnite on Nintendo Switch and FaceTiming on tablets are a thing, it is more than a little confusing to understand what year it is. As a long-time comic book reader, I have come to understand that the DC Universe shows take place outside the Arrowverse and even the DCEU in their own universes. So there can be some leeway to the parallel universes having a different, hybrid history that can make a show be timeless and not dated. That, however, can only go so far, and I don't know how this could be fixed or ignored if the later episodes take it too far. There is also one thing with the dialogue Johns has written in some scenes, but to not drag this any longer, let's go with the opening and Sylvester Pemberton's death. When he gives Pat the cosmic staff to pass on, Sylvester seems to mislead him at first to take his place before telling Pat it's not for him and that he is not noble or brave of heart, which makes Sylvester's final moments paint him as a jerk to who he calls a good friend. This is an example of the flaws in Jeff Johns' writing character development at the expense of making side characters behave out of character or otherwise unlikable way. I would have written this scene to make Pat say, before taking the staff, that he has held it before and the staff has not worked for him. Then Sylvester would respond by telling Pat that he knows that, but believes in Pat to find someone who the staff does work on. This is the kind of fix that would have made the scene much better. Otherwise, this adaptation from by the original writer and creator of Stargirl has begun with Jeff Johns reworking his old work with a cast that has brought these comic book characters into life faithfully and otherwise acceptable reinventions, like in Brainwave's case. From this point on, other writers will be taking over for the remaining episodes until Johns returns for the final episodes. Out of the other writers, I can only recognize James Robinson, who will be credited for episodes 4 and 9, titled Wildcat and Braveway Jr. Ha! So that hospital scene is going to lead somewhere. But when it comes to these other people, I have no idea what backgrounds they have. All I can do is have faith in Jeff Johns in running the show as Stargirl is his baby and he has previously declined different networks' proposals for the show that didn't include Pat and his Stripe robot suit. With this, I let Stargirl go on, knowing and hoping it to become a standard for other comic book shows when it comes to adapting source material and respecting the artist and creator's vision for the IP. Stargirl's first season will have 13 episodes coming once a week to DC Universe, HBO, and the CW, meaning it will run through the summer all the way to August. Until then, may your heart be your guiding key.